Welcome, everybody, to today's episode of the Empower Performance Podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Monos. We have a very special guest today, Sahana Slack. Sahana, if you could just introduce yourself really quickly and just tell us about your athletic background and what you do now as a coach, we'd
Yeah.
really appreciate it.
Yeah, cool. So I am Sahana Slack. My background is kind of the non-traditional strength coach background, you could say. My degree was in molecular biology and chemistry.
Mm.
I worked in labs right out of school, but it was honestly pretty boring. It was not the glamour that I thought it was going to be when I went into it, but I was able to use my science background and kind of take that back, bring me back to sport. And now I love my job. I work with collegiate athletes, youth athletes, and now I'm working with a USL W team, the
Yeah.
Monterey Bay Sirens. Yeah. So it's really cool. I mostly work with female athletes, but of course there's tons of boys that I work with too, like my brothers.
And then, if I remember correctly, did you also play soccer?
Yeah, I played college soccer. I played at Cal State Monterey Bay, and I coach there now. So it's
Oh.
it's a cool like turnaround. Yeah,
Soccer was your main sport you played your whole life?
I played it my whole life. I was a Unfortunately, I was a single sport athlete,
Okay.
but that's kind of goes against what I preach now. But I
Mhm.
think I got away with it because from a really young age, my mom had me doing strength and conditioning, speed and agility, pretty much since I was like sixth grade. So I
Okay.
think honestly, having that really balanced me out as an athlete and kept me
Mhm.
healthy, which I'm super happy about.
So, yeah, that's an interesting topic. My wife and I were both college soccer players as well. She was more multi-sport than I was. She played basketball pretty well, and then soccer was her best sport. And her dad eventually told her that she had to pick one sport so she wouldn't get injured and she could have a
Hmm.
better shot at a scholarship and all that. And she never dealt with injuries and then specialized and then started getting injured all the time. And I think she retired with 7 concussions and like 1 knee surgery. So, like, it really packs on, but that's one of the things I tell people with multi-sport. Of course, it makes you a better mover, a better learner. You have more options. You can pick up skills quicker, which to me is maybe one of the best things about being an athlete, or the best signs of true athleticism is adaptability and the ability to learn quickly, and adapt quickly and all that. But yeah, also you get to use your body in different ways, so there's not these overuse injuries or the risk of having, concussion after concussion and all that.
Totally.
And so, but me as a athlete, I was a bit more specialized, didn't really have that same situation. And then, like you said, you preach multi-sport. So now in my adulthood, I picked up like jujitsu and like Muay Thai and kickboxing and all that stuff just to like move in
Fun.
different ways. And it's kind of
Yeah,
funny because like everybody thinks their sport is the hardest, so you do a different sport. And then it's just like,
for
well, now
sure.
it all sucks. Everything hurts all the time,
It sucks.
just in
Yeah.
different ways. So, but yeah, it's cool. It's fun to learn new skills. I think that's part of usefulness. So, speaking about your job, one of the things that stood out to me when I saw your page is you made a post about having older women and younger women working together. I
Yeah.
thought that was really cool. It almost felt like big sister, little sister.
Totally.
Can you please speak to that? Like, how did that become a thing?
Yeah, yeah. So I actually really love doing that. Sometimes I'll mix some of my college kids in with some of my like middle school, high school girls. And during the summer, I
Mhm.
think it's the best opportunity to do that because, people are home for the summer, club sports are on a break, kids can just train, like just strength train, speed and agility, that kind of thing. And I think having the big girls around is a really good just example for the younger
Mhm.
girls of where they could be. For example, I have these two they're middle schoolers. One of them is going into high school, but they're both really tall girls. They're tall for their team,
Mhm.
tall for their age, honestly. They're really long and lanky. And I think sometimes they feel kind of awkward in that tallness,
Mhm.
just, I mean, I think being a girl in general, like when you look physically different, it makes you feel weird, even though everybody's like, you got the golden ticket, you're tall and you play soccer. Like I wish I was taller. I'm only 5'7", but I wish I was like 5'9", 5'10". That would have been a good
Mhm.
height. But I brought some of my taller girls around them, and I think they just kind of see it as like, whoa, okay, so being tall is an advantage. Like I'm valued more, and I think they can see the dedication and the drive and like the ability to want to work. And I never harp on my athletes too much of like, if you do it wrong, it doesn't count. But I
Mhm.
think all of my athletes kind of pick up that mentality, which I appreciate. So it's nice when the older girls, maybe the rep wasn't the cleanest or they cut the line a little short. They're like, I'm going to do that over again. Let me just do this and then we can move on. And that mentality around the younger girls, I think really puts into perspective that everything you do is your own choice.
Mhm.
Like how hard you work is your own choice. As much as your parents are bringing you to this training session, paying for this training session, it's really for you.
Mhm.
And you make it what you make it. And I think when the older kids are there, the younger kids are like, oh, I'm not being forced to do this. This
Mhm.
is this is extra, and
Mhm.
I get to put how much effort into it. And I think honestly, after getting my younger girls with some of the older girls, like, I have seen a switch change in them with their
Mhm.
training when I'm just training with them now, that they're very way more locked in, way more like, "That one doesn't count," like, "I didn't like it, I'm gonna
Yeah.
redo it," or, something like that. And that is such a joy because, again, I like to give kids autonomy, or
Mhm.
girls in general autonomy, because I think sometimes, in the sport world, they're kind of not taught the same way as boys are taught, not given the
Mhm.
same, nitty-gritty instruction or relatable instruction that makes
Mhm.
sense to them, excuse me, and how their brains work. So I think when they have that autonomy and the choice, and, they're given everything, they can then make those decisions to work hard, to put in the effort, to really be clean on your reps, things like that. Yeah.
I kind of have a two-pronged way that I wanna attack this. One, I just wanna relate to you in terms of, like, sort of similar situations. I am working with a 13-year-old soccer player. Originally, it was, speed, agility, strength, conditioning, that kinda stuff, because he was post ACL, and we're just trying to
Mm,
get him, return to play, all that stuff.
yeah.
So we were working alongside a physical therapist, and as soon as they said, "Right, he's cleared, he can work with you," we're just trying to get him back to his best, in fact, better than his best. And he wasn't really locked in on that. He didn't see the value in it. He was already taller and faster and stronger than everybody, so he said, "Well, why do I have to work hard?" And so we transitioned him to skill training. So, as a soccer player, I was also a soccer coach and a skills trainer before I became a personal trainer.
Mhm.
I was like, I can work with him this way as well. So we're doing all these drills and all that stuff, and like he's maybe giving 70, 80% effort. And I was asking him at one point, like, just trying to understand what he wants to get out of it, right? Because if not, his parents drive him there, they pay the money. What is
Right.
his purpose for being there? So I said, "What is your ultimate goal? Like, what level do you want to play at?" He said, "D1 or pro," which everybody says, right?
Of
It's like,
course.
okay, well, why D1 or pro? What does that actually mean to you? The why means so much more to me than the what. And he's like, "I just want to be able to play a little longer." And I was like, "Okay. Does D2 or D3 mean that it's automatically failure?" He's like, "Not necessarily." And I was like, "Does D1 matter that much?" He's like, "Maybe a little." And I was like, "Okay, what do you want for high school?" Asking all these questions. I'm like, "Okay, do
Mhm.
you think right now you would start varsity? Do you think right now you would be scouted to play D1 at these big schools and all that stuff?" He's like, "Maybe not." And I was like, "Why?" And he's like, "Blah, blah, blah, whatever." But right now, against his peers, he's taller and faster. But if he
Mhm.
goes right now as a 13-year-old going into his freshman year in the fall against dudes who are like 18 and already taller and faster, stronger, then what? Then he needs to have more skill. He needs to have a better attitude, better mindset, better IQ, and all that stuff. Like this
Totally.
is the opportunity to develop that, right? So
Mhm.
if you want what you say you want as much as you do, like this is your chance, right? And then
Right.
after that, his session was incredible. His feet were moving a lot sharper. He was running a lot harder. He seemed a lot more motivated. But sometimes it's like a healthy reality check,
Yeah.
understanding someone's why. And I think you don't even necessarily have to have that conversation in the instance that you're talking about. When the younger girls get to look up to the older girls and see what it really takes, that
Mhm.
conversation almost isn't necessary because then they're going to learn really fast. This is what it takes. And this is the gap that I
Exactly.
have to cover. And it might be motivating as well because they might not even know what's possible.
Mhm.
The second prong to that, I wanted to ask you, I can see a lot of the benefits that the younger girls get out of it. What would you say are some of the main benefits that the older girls would get out of working with the younger girls?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I feel like when I became a coach, I wanted to take things from all of the coaches I've had and
Mm,
apply that to my athletes, and do it a little bit better. Not that they did
mhm,
it bad. I just want to keep making athletes better. I feel
right,
like hopefully one of my athletes becomes a coach and is a better coach than me. Like, that's my
mhm,
goal, right? So I think with the older girls, I think it's kind of similar to that. I think they kind of have that reality check, like, I'm who someone is looking up to, or like
mhm,
someone sees me as the role model. And I think when you get put in that position, it's, again, you make that self choice. And like you said, it's kind of unsaid, where you're like, okay, I'm being watched to be replicated. And I don't want this younger athlete to replicate something sloppy. Like, I want this young athlete to see me and see precision, and see,
mhm,
drive and dedication, those kind of things, and see the work ethic kind of follow through.
mhm,
And I think that's what the older girls are doing.
mhm,
It's unsaid, like you're saying,
mhm,
but that's what it looks like to me. Like,
mhm,
mixing those groups together is so much fun. And like right now in my summer group, I have gonna be high school seniors with like college juniors, and I'm putting them together with retired, or like out of college, and now they're
mhm,
just playing in the USLW. And I have them all on the same squat rack, and they all are suffering together, you could say, doing the same thing, but they're all at different levels, lifting different weights, but they all can cheer each other on. And I think when the older girls are working with the younger girls and they're like, "I've been there. Like, I know what it's like." And it's really intimidating
Right.
and it sometimes can be like, I don't belong here,
Mhm.
So I think they try to make them feel super welcomed. I've never had an instance where like the older girls are stick their nose up
Mhm.
or mean or anything like that.
Mhm.
It's totally like it's amazing girlhood that
Mhm.
I get to see and I love it. Just
Mhm.
girls supporting girls at all different stages. And honestly, that makes my little heart like grow 3 times the size.
That's a wonderful thing. I find that the closest that I can relate to that right now in my life is I have a 5-month-old son,
Mm,
and there was a quote that I heard when I was, like, a teenager, and it was, like, kinda motivational to me. It was, "Be the man that you want your son to be."
yeah.
And so now that, like, he's starting to interact a little bit more, we can, like, play little games, laugh and smile. It's like
Mhm.
he's gonna pick up on every behavior that I do so
Right.
quickly, and it's just such a reality check. When my wife was pregnant, I was like, "Alright, I gotta get my stuff together." But when I found out it was a boy, I felt like there's even more pressure because I think a boy will learn from his dad how to become a man.
Right.
So he might take that example a little bit more. Not that my wife wouldn't have a huge influence, of course, but then I was just like, "Man, is this w if he ended up exactly like me, is that good enough?" And then I
Right.
was like, "The answer is no, then just give you the motivation to, like, keep everything, like you're talking
Mhm.
about, just get everything on track." And so it's nice how, like, motivation changes and all that stuff. But if you're looking up to someone, you wanna be like them, that can be motivation, but also if you see someone's looking up to you, you don't wanna let them down, also
No.
motivation. So I think that's a really wonderful thing. I also wanted to comment on the clips that you post. It's almost unanimous that, like, someone is smiling or laughing in your clips, that it seems
Yeah.
like it's just a really happy, fun environment. Coaches, they use it like a buzzword. They're like, "Oh, we wanna have fun." They might do, like, spike ball for 5 minutes and then go and just do, like, the most brutal, like, weightlifting program and be really serious, bring the whistle out, scream at them like a drill sergeant. But you seem to have a great environment. Is that very deliberate? What are your specific approaches to it? Can you please speak to that?
Yeah, I that's a really awesome comment. I really appreciate
Yeah.
that. I really try to foster that, honestly. Like I'm a very relaxed person. I'm not the coach who's getting up on a podium and
Mhm,
like hooting and hollering or clapping super loud. Like, don't get me wrong, if an athlete is about to PR, like I'm rooting for them.
mhm,
I'm clapping, I'm saying let's go. But my coaching style is not scream in front of the group
mhm,
to motivate. That's just not me. And honestly, I think that doesn't work for a lot of girls. I think
mhm,
some athletes for sure they need that, but a lot of my teams they're just not like that. And
mhm.
also, I think their head coaches should do that
Yeah.
and have that role where my role is kind of a transition from the coaching staff to the players and making them comfortable in a different space, right? So
Mhm,
the strength and conditioning room, sometimes an athlete who doesn't see a lot of minutes on the field or the court or in the pool, they thrive in the strength room. And that is the best part of their college career. And that's
mhm,
totally great for me. And I love that. And I want to keep fostering that. But just generally, I want everybody to have a good time in the strength room. Like
mhm,
lifting can be really fun. And especially for women, and this mostly just goes back to because I work with women, not because, women or men, very different, But I think when women realize how strong and how capable they are, it's fun and it's a joy to be like, yeah, I just busted out 7 pull-ups. Like, that's sick, or I'm front squatting my body weight. Like,
mhm,
that's nuts. And being able to cheer on your teammate and realize like you are an incredible athlete and it just takes the hard work, to do that. And I really like doing that for my athletes. One of my kids that's home for the summer, she was telling me in her weight room, like if they yawn, their
mhm,
strength coach makes them go do suicides. And that just blew my mind because I'm like, that makes you become a little bit smaller.
mhm,
And I don't like doing that to athletes.
mhm,
I like them being able to express themselves. Like
mhm,
my weight room, it's very often like between sets, groups are dancing or just cheering each other on. And it just feels like a safe space, I will
mhm,
say, where everybody is safe to fail.
mhm,
That is like the number one thing that I like to tell my athletes is failure is totally okay in here.
mhm,
Like this is where we want to fail because
mhm.
then you can learn from that, you can grow from that, you can get stronger and then match that goal again, let's say in a week, 2 weeks, who knows, and then crush it. And then it was never really a failure. It's just a change in your ability, your mindset, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I wanna touch on 2 of those points that you said. One, you're talking about just, like, joy, and then the other one was talking about failure. I tell people that failure is feedback.
Mhm.
It's just an opportunity to learn and adjust, and get better, and it's like, you can't expect to start something to be on top of the mountain. It's not
Yeah.
realistic.
Mm.
So it's kind of inevitable. It's almost better to accelerate failure to fail faster, to put yourself
Yeah.
out there. And that's why if you make people feel big and feel okay and safe and failing and all that stuff, they'll be willing to take risks as opposed to
Mhm.
the ones where they make a mistake. You say, "You're not doing your job." You scream at them, you beat them down, and they're
Yeah.
not gonna do, that whole thing. But, along with the joy thing, there's a quote that I heard recently that I really liked. It was saying that, everyone thinks that success is the key to happiness, but happiness is the key to success. And
Yeah.
what they mean by that is, like, if you have ever bargained with yourself and said, let's say you're a high school soccer player and you say, "I'll only be happy once I'm in college." Then your college is like, "I'll
Mhm.
only be happy when I'm pro," or "I'll only be happy when I'm starting," whatever.
Yeah.
You keep saying you put off your happiness, and I mean, then you make that journey so miserable that maybe you want to avoid it naturally. Like, you never realize that. If you're so scared
Mhm.
of taking the buzzer beater because you might miss, you might never take it. You never get to experience the joy of actually sinking the shot.
Totally.
So if you can actually have this perspective where you enjoy it, you understand that failure is part of it, but you can still enjoy the process, enjoy all that. I think people will do it more, but do it with a better energy, better enthusiasm, effort, creativity, all that stuff, and find more success. So I kind of want people to think that there's so much hustle culture stuff out there. It's like, oh, I wake up at
Mhm.
4 a.m. and I eat a bowl of nails without any milk, and all that kind of. So like people have
Totally.
that. Yeah, it's like it's what if we said, hey, I'm doing this because I love it. I'm just gonna do it
Mhm.
well, I'm gonna do it really well and mastery as opposed to, putting pressure on yourself for perfection, which is
Yeah.
pretty unreasonable.
Yeah. Yeah. This whole spring, with my volleyball team, one of the biggest topics we tried to work on was gratitude. And I
Um,
think the more an athlete has gratitude, the happier they are
mhm,
genuinely and the more
mhm,
successful they become. I think all of those things kind of cascade into one another. And sometimes like it's midterms, you've had weights. We've been going for 7 weeks,
mhm,
like things suck, but it's still such a joy to move your body, like to be healthy, to not have an injury, to be
mhm,
surrounded by your teammates. You only have 4 years in college, in college sports, 5 years maybe, but like really taking advantage of that time and being like slowing down, like you're saying,
mhm,
like you just
mhm,
need to be present and like, wow, where am I? Like, I get to be in this awesome weight room. I get to be surrounded by coaches who want to win and who want to
mhm,
push me, and teammates who want to win and who want to push me and support me. And I think sometimes in girls' sports, those things get convoluted a little bit. It gets very competitive. And I know that
mhm,
because I am a girl who played sports. And, sometimes you see your teammates as your competition, which they are.
mhm,
But, I was told this saying back in college that everybody can get an A,
mhm,
like if you work hard and you study and you do all those things, you can get the A. But playing time isn't that easy.
mhm,
But being a good teammate and supporting, let's say, the person that plays your same position and pushing them and they push you back, like
mhm,
that will make you both better, which will make your team even better.
mhm,
So I think changing the mindset and being more grateful for the opportunity to have to work hard.
mhm,
Pressure is a privilege, and being under pressure like, is a good thing. Like,
mhm,
it's such a nice thing to be able to push yourself through,
mhm,
and doing hard things is so good for your brain, and, like, having to fight through something that's super uncomfortable, like not getting playing time or, you're stagnating, you're not going up in weight or reps or anything like that, whatever the problem is in front of you, like, it's really hard, but if you keep pushing yourself, leaning on your teammates, leaning on your coaches, and then remembering that you want to do this, that this is a choice and this is a happy choice, that 8-year-old you was dreaming of, like playing a college sport, then I think it becomes way more successful. And I really saw that in my volleyball team. Like everybody had a huge mindset shift this spring, and I
mhm,
think it made every single player better, regardless of how much playing time they were getting.
mhm.
Like everybody pushed and it was good.
So to add on to that, you're talking about like, it's good to do hard things. It's good for the brain. I think it's good for the spirit, exactly like you're saying. I had a guest on the podcast, Hunter Saffel, and for fun, he just runs an insane amount. So like he did a last man standing competition, which is you run 4.3
Mhm.
miles every hour on the hour for 24 hours. So it's a total of 100 miles. And he just chose to do that. And we were talking about like doing difficult things. So for me, my difficult thing right now is combat sports. It kind of sucks when someone's choking you or punching you in the teeth, and you
Right.
still got to figure it out. For him, it's hour 18 and going back up for like another 4.3 mile run and all that stuff. And we're just talking about how sometimes silence is better than a podcast or music. Some except for this podcast, everybody should listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
But then sometimes, we talk like boredom isn't a bad thing. Being cold isn't a bad thing.
Mhm.
All these different things. struggling, difficulty, all that stuff. And then it's kind of getting into delayed gratification. I think that, yes, there are more than like two main types of joy, but I think you can generalize and see that you might have like short term gratification with long term kind of consequences. And
Mhm.
like the analogy I give is like you eat three slices of pie, you might really be happy in that moment and
Right.
then feel terrible later. Or delayed gratification, like you're talking about, if you're a fringe player, the whole season you work your ass off, and then you get the starting spot going into postseason or something like that, and you're just this hugely important player. That's probably going to feel way better than the
Mhm.
three slices of pie felt in that one
For
moment.
sure.
And yeah, so like I tried to tell people delayed gratification. A personal example is a female client that I have right now. She's in her mid 30s. She's training to be a park ranger. So, but the law enforcement division. So it's basically becoming a
Wow.
cop.
Mhm.
And so we have all these fitness tests that we have to do. And some of them she was able to pass right away, but other ones, like it was sit ups. So I think she started with four sit ups in like a minute and she had to do 27. And when we finally got like, we passed 27, she got 30. It took weeks and weeks and weeks to pass it. The joy on
Mhm.
her face was so much greater than, just maybe like you hit a PR one week, you hit a PR the next week, the next week, the next week. The fact that she didn't get it for so long and finally did, I
Right.
think it was so much more rewarding. So I appreciate you talking about that. I also wanted to speak about one of the things that you've noticed about the mentality of women in general,
Mhm.
and I'm happy to add to this from my personal experiences. You work with boys and girls. Do you notice a difference in mentality when it comes to the weight room or sports? Maybe it'd be confidence, any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And how do you address that?
Yeah, so I feel like the best place to start with that is,
Mhm.
like, 8-year-olds. Like,
Okay.
8-year-olds are a great show of how the mentality between boys and girls can be so different,
Mhm.
especially approaching anything physical, and this is where I lean on it's very much so a societal thing. I have a group of siblings that I train, and they're like friend siblings. They all grew up mostly boys, like 4
Mhm.
boys and 1 little girl. She does not know societal stigmas around
Mhm.
girls limiting themselves at all. Like, she sees herself at, like, equal to the boys. Like, he's doing a squat with 25 pounds. I'm gonna do it with 30 and do
Mhm.
it better and go slower. Like, it's very competitive for her and very gritty. And I think that's naturally, I don't want to say naturally, but that's societally how boys have grown up. Like, if
Mhm.
they can do it, I can do it. And I love that mindset. Like, if someone else can do it, why can't I? And I like to get that. But let's say a college freshman who's, been through puberty, done the whole social high school thing, and
Mhm.
it's kind of awkward. And you get in the weight room and you're like, I don't know if I can put tens on the bar. Like, I'm just going to stick with the bar, and that mindset really takes effort and shifting into being like, I got that. I'm gonna warm up with 10s and then I'm gonna throw 25s on, or I'm gonna do something more, you know? But I think the transition between a freshman and a sophomore in college is kind of where I see big, huge shifts in
Mhm.
mentality, especially within my female athletes, where let's say like my brothers, when they were freshmen in college, or yeah, freshmen in college, they biggest egos I've ever seen, honestly, and I wish I was more like them in that way, where they just approach something like they see someone do it, "Oh, I for sure can do that," even though there's no evidence backing that they should be able to do that, something like that. But girls, and this is back to society, this is why, in my opinion, there's a huge ACL issue
Mhm.
within women's sports. It's all of these things tie together, and it's a mindset thing, and it's a huge society thing. What box do we put girls in compared to the box that we put boys in? We don't really put boys in a box ever, honestly. When it comes to training, when it comes to anything physical, there's never a box that we're like, you're probably not strong enough to do that. You shouldn't try that. Where girls, it's like, I don't know if you can do that. Maybe let's start smaller,
Mhm.
And I think that's so common, or like, girls shouldn't be in the weight room, or girls shouldn't be lifting so much, or you're going to get big and bulky if you lift. Like, all of
Right.
these lies that we're telling women are crazy, in my opinion, and young girls, especially when they're just so impressionable. And anything you say to a girl is going to stick, especially coming from a coach. There's so many things that coaches have said to me in the past that stuck with me in a good way and in a bad way.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I think coaches sometimes don't realize how much responsibility they have when they're teaching girls, and how, like, you can convince a girl she is invincible and she will believe that for her whole life.
Mhm.
But you can also very easily convince a girl that she's not good enough, she's not strong enough, she's not fast enough, and she will believe you because you are who she is looking up to. But if you lead in a way where, you see a girl who's a freshman in college who's coming into the weight room and is very shy about pushing her weight or going up in reps, but you tell her, like, you're super capable of this. You wouldn't be here if you weren't capable of this. Like your
Mhm,
body can do this. You can do anything you put your mind to. And I truly
mhm,
believe that. And you can see that switch. Like now my freshmen, let's say on the volleyball team again, they're pushing weight, man. And
mhm,
they came in like I've never touched a barbell before, you
mhm,
know, and I think that transition is a fully coachable thing.
mhm,
And it's not something that you're born into. You know, you're not born into a box. You're put into a box by
mhm.
society over time, you know?
I have so many stories that, like, I listen to every word you said, by the way, but it just, like,
Yeah.
would spring up so many stories. You'd say something
Mhm.
that reminded me of a situation. So, going back to the soccer player super fast, you're talking about belief and the power of belief. He's right-footed, we're working on the left foot, he's like, "Coach, I'm right-footed," and all that stuff. I was like, "As of right now, you start telling me you're a two-footed player. As of right now." Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, if I ask you what foot it is, it's you're two-footed. You gotta give
Mhm.
yourself permission to be good with the other foot, and you gotta believe that you can be good with the other foot, and you gotta train the other foot. That's the only way. It's like, as long as you stay on right-footed, you're gonna avoid that left foot as much as possible, and you'll be right-footed forever. But, like, you're putting yourself in that box. So I basically said, "I don't like that box. No more box."
No more
Step out of it.
box.
But, so, as far as, women are concerned, I've noticed that a lot. I've noticed a lot of things when it comes to confidence and just giving them permission to be, big and powerful and take up space and all that. My first ever internship was in Cincinnati at a place called Proforce Sports Performance, and I mostly worked with middle school and high school athletes, boys and girls, a fairly even mix. And there's only so much equipment, right? And so if there's
Mhm.
6 racks and there's 12 kids and they all need a rack for their first block, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes you would see the boys would take up the racks and the girls would go to block B, wait for the rack to be free and go back. This girl grabbed the only specialty bar that was like there's, like, one safety bar. She grabbed
Yeah.
that bar, she put it in the rack, everything, set it up, and then some guy went and took the rack. He didn't realize that he had done it. He just
Mhm.
thought, "This belongs to me. I need this. It's
Right.
here. It belongs to me."
Mhm.
And she immediately was like, and she didn't wanna confront him and say, "This is my bar. This is my rack. Get out of
Of
here." So
course.
I just talked to her. I wasn't gonna force her into an awkward situation, but I was like, "That was your rack, right?" She's like, "Yes." And I thought, I could say, "Do you want me to talk to him?" But that doesn't teach her anything. So
Right.
then I just says like, "Why don't you tell him?" And then she's like, "No," and she kinda got shy that one time. And I was like, "Okay." So had I had more sessions with her, I would have challenged her to be like, "Hey," like, non-confrontationally, but just be like, "Hey, like, my bar, my rack. You can come back to it after I'm done," or something like that, right? But another time was, like, she was doing med ball slams, for example, and she would just pick the ball up overhead and let it drop, let gravity do the work. And I was like, "No, you gotta
Mhm.
rip that ball to the ground." And so it was the dumbest thing ever, but I was like, "Is there a girl at school that you don't like?" And she's like, "Uh-huh." Like, imagine her face on the ground, and she's like, ripped it as hard as
Yeah.
possible. Like, that's intent. Whatever you gotta do to picture it, you're allowed to be that violent. You're allowed
Yeah.
to be violent, you're allowed to be aggressive, you're allowed to be whatever. There's a time
Mhm.
and place for it, and it doesn't mean that you have to suddenly change your entire identity. My wife was,
Totally.
All-American for NAIA in college. She's 5'7", she's not particularly huge, but she's the most gentle soul ever. She steps on the field, she braids her hair, she puts a headband on, she's a different person.
Yeah.
And I've seen her in co-ed, we played co-ed, a couple years ago. There was a 6'4" dude, she beat him to a header, and then on
Mhm.
another play, she flattened him shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah.
Just like, this is real, this is possible, so I
Mhm.
have so many more stories, but it's just nice that you would kinda mention that and just say, "Hey, like, you can be these things. They
Right.
exist." And so I also
Yeah.
look back to when you're talking about having the role models, the older girls and the
Mhm.
younger girls, you get to see it. Now you don't even just have to tell someone and they have to, like, kinda believe it, they can see the
Right.
reality, so I think that's really cool too.
Right.
Mhm,
Yeah. It is super important to see like and that's why I think the college weight room is such a special place because
mhm,
naturally you have the younger girls with the older girls. Like,
mhm,
you know, sometimes if it's like a medical red shirt or like the COVID girls, like sometimes you have 25-year-olds and
mhm,
18-year-olds lifting on the same, you know, rack. I mean, hopefully not because, you know, 25 girls should be pushing more weight, but theoretically, you know, they're all in the same room together, all pushing each other. And if you're a freshman and you see your teammate like deadlifting 3 plates and you're, like, working on the 25s and you're like, "Holy cow, like, I'm gonna get there, like, I
mhm,
can do that in, like, 2, 3 years," you know, like, I can easily work my way up,
mhm,
and I love that mentality opposed to, you know, "She's doing it, so I can't do it." I don't like that, I think that's really a common mentality, but I don't
mhm,
think that's, you know, realistic or helpful at all. It's more like, "She can do that, so I can do that," you know?
mhm,
It's the realization of like, "Whoa, I can push my body." Like,
mhm,
I she didn't sh and like this is what I tell people, like, we have one girl on our team who she throws weight around. She does like a ton of pull-ups
mhm,
very easily, and some of our younger girls look at her like, I'm never gonna be that strong." And I'm like, "Yes, yes, you are. You just have to keep working at it, and you're
mhm,
totally gonna get there." And when you do get there, it feels so good, and it feels so fulfilling. Like, I put in the effort and I did the work. And I think you start to trust yourself more
mhm,
because you're like, okay, I told myself something, I worked at it and I did it. like, okay, I do know what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
That internal monologue can shift and support you.
I wanted to you mentioned the eight-year-old girl as well, and how, like, if she's raised with brothers or, like, a lot of boys and all that, she won't see the
Mhm.
difference. One of the nice things about jujitsu is that at the younger ages, the boys and girls will roll with each other because 'cause they're about the
Mhm.
same size and strength, and then
Yeah.
actually there's a point where the girls can start beating up on the boys because they begin puberty sooner.
Get it bigger. Mhm.
Eventually, it switches, right? And then you have the boys roll with boys or men with men and women with women.
Mhm.
But it's cool that they get this confidence early on and all that stuff, and that they get to learn that, like, I am capable, I can do these things. They can be rough
Right.
and tough and all that. But
Mhm.
then also, like, I'll do a gi class, which is, like, the traditional
Yeah.
uniform, and there's a woman in the class, and it's a very small class, so sometimes I have to roll with her. She's military, she's tough as nails, she goes twice a day, like, 5 days a week. I go a couple times a week. She's an absolute stud, and, normally when you roll with women, it's understood that the men will be more gentle and not try to, like, force with strength and size and all that stuff. But she's about my size, she's got really good technique, she's got good skill. So,
Yeah.
like, if I'm not careful, she's gonna catch me.
She gets you. Yeah.
Like, I started off really soft, like, during the drilling, doing certain exercises where it's very
Mhm.
uncomfortable, and at one point, she looks at me, she's like, "We can't both be comfortable." And so I
Yeah.
was like, "Okay, like, if you're cool with this, let's go." And so, like, she's actually a really great competition for me and all that stuff, but it's just, it's cool that I know that this is possible. I know that women can be this tough, they can be this badass
Mhm.
and all that stuff, and you see it, but I think that's, like, what you're talking about. Women have to see it to know it's possible, and then they'll open up more, and they have to be taught that it's possible too. If they don't see it, someone has to tell them that it's
Mhm.
possible. But going back to the eight-year-old thing, I was a soccer coach before I was a trainer, did high school and club coaching, and once a week for club, I coached, like U8, U9, U10. For club, they would have the coaches switch, so you coach a different team just to get a different voice.
Yeah.
My first time ever coaching one of the girls' teams, I thought I would just treat them the exact same, like, "What's the difference?" So I
Mhm.
thought I'd treat them the exact same and it'd go perfectly, and it didn't. If 2 boys, 2 eight-year-olds just had, like, a little tussle, you just tell them to knock it off, get over it, and then that's
Yeah.
it. And then they'll, like, laugh and shake hands and, like, squirt water bottles on each other and everything's fine.
Right. Move on.
This one girl came up to me, God, I feel so bad about it. She was like, "Coach Matt, Sally said this," and then I just, like, responded how I would to them, like, "Who cares?" Just like, "Who cares?" Just go
Yeah.
on.
Move on. Yeah.
Yeah. I said, "Who cares?" And she's like, "Coach Matt," and then she, like, gave me the cold shoulder for, like, the rest of the day and all that stuff, and I was like, "Man, did I handle that?" Oh.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if you've dealt with any of those differences, but I find that
Yeah.
when I learned that when I'm coaching women, I have to be generally a little bit more supportive or welcoming to their emotions and all that stuff, listen a little bit more. With a guy, I could just be a little bit more blunt and just
Direct.
like, "Shut up, get back to work," that kind of a thing. So I'm not
Yeah.
sure if you would agree with that.
Yeah, actually, I do agree with that, and I think that's okay, and I think that might be a little controversial that
Uh-huh.
you coach, women and men differently. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's totally true, though. I am working with the U20s of our, NBFC. It's a USL team, and the boys, I can be very direct and very, like, "Cut that out. Stop
Uh-huh.
doing that. Get back to work," like, very short, and they're like, "Oh,
Mhm.
yeah, like, focus again, the stop chasing butterflies and get back to it." Where girls, it's like, I like to have a little bit of connection. I think connection works a little bit better with
Mhm.
the women. Not that it doesn't work with the boys, but
Mhm.
it's a different kind of connection. I think
Mhm.
boys, when they're being coached, they want to be coached in a very direct, I almost
Yeah.
want to say drill sergeant kind of way,
Mhm.
in a like, I'm telling you to do something, go do it. It's a yes, I'm gonna go do it. Where girls, it's like, I like to tell them more so why. Like,
Mhm.
this is why we're doing this. I want you to go full range of motion because it's going to help your tendons over
Mhm.
time. I want your tendons to be just as strong as your muscles. And I think when the girls are given a little bit more autonomy, they are like, okay, yeah, sure, I will go and do that. I will try to get lower. I'll stop reasoning with you or like trying to talk you out of making me go do this extra rep or something. I mean, just yesterday in our weight room, it was a mix. There was like half boys, half girls. All of these kids are college age ish. And, the boys group together, the girls kind of group together towards the end, when everybody's doing their accessories, that's when it starts like mingling a little bit more. But the boys, I'm like, I want this sharper. I want this, I want your pull-ups to be a little bit all the way up. Like,
Mhm.
stop giving me 0 reps. I'm sorry, but when you're not going full range of motion, that doesn't count. That's not a
Mhm.
pull-up for me. With the girls, I'm like, you got this. Go all the way down and pull yourself all the way up.
Mhm.
Like, you can do a full range of motion. And I think it's like such a subtle difference, but I think it makes a big deal. And I think this goes into something that I've been trying to learn a little bit more. I mean, I'm still a pretty young coach, honestly,
Mhm.
but I think in the coaching world, girls having female coaches is kind of a newer thing. Like when I grew up, all of my coaches were men. My speed and agility coach was a guy. My club coaches were guys. My personal trainers were guys.
Mhm,
I think growing up, I didn't have a single female coach until I
mhm,
got to college. And I think when that happens, it's a huge disservice to girls
mhm,
not having more female coaches. Not to say that boy coaches are bad or not good role models. I think
mhm,
you touched on it, like having different voices is really good.
mhm,
But I think sometimes directness from female coaches gets taken as getting in trouble or being upset with, when a coach is super direct. So, it's teaching girls that directness isn't you getting in trouble. It's not a bad thing, but at the same time, I think it's female coaches also learning like there needs to be a little bit more connection for there to
mhm,
be trust. Where I think honestly, when I was coached by males and I was told something direct, it was okay, like I got it. But again, I didn't have huge connections with my coaches at the
mhm,
time. Where I think when women are coached by women, a connection is kind of necessary because, there's more understanding, there's more relatability just with various things. I mean, going through your cycle in the weight room, like every single day is so different. And that's something that as much as a male strength coach can learn about, we'll never really know and we'll never really understand what it's like when you're in your luteal phase and you're being told you need to do 80% of your 1 rep max. Like that's crazy. Like, sorry,
mhm,
that's not happening. You know, like it doesn't matter how hard I'm pushing, how well I slept, how much I ate, like that's just not happening. So I think being able to connect with your athletes and be like, hey, if your period's about to start or you're in that luteal phase, like I understand that effort's low. Whatever your, RPE target for the day is, hit
mhm,
that. It doesn't matter if your weight's lower or higher,
mhm. Yeah,
like
it's all
and that
relative.
connection piece is what's important.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So kind of going into that, this again is a generalization. I'm not trying to get in trouble with it, but I find
Yeah.
that the girls are more likely to want to be liked or to please the coaches in a sense where like the boys can just be like, "Ah, Coach Matt doesn't know what he's talking about." And so that's why it almost feels like you have to crack the whip to like keep them in line. It feels like two heads are butting sometimes. And of
Mhm.
course, you have your like when I was a high school coach and I had the boys, you have your more sensitive boys. You got to put your arm around their shoulder. But
Yeah.
one of the tricks that I did is the kids that would probably be my biggest problem, like the popular kids and all that. I would make them my captain, and then I would make them the person that everybody looks at, and I try to make them on my side as opposed to against me, so we could
Mm.
all have the same culture in that direction, but then I'd always say like, "Hey, like, whatever you do, they're gonna follow." Do you know what I mean? They
Mhm.
look to you no matter what. Might as well make them the leader, and then I just put, like, the pressure on them to succeed and show them the best and all that, but, you're for lack of better words, you're kinda dickhead guys, like, you would just say, like, "What, you're too good to, like, track back and make a tackle, you're gonna let everybody else do the hard work and all that stuff?" And then you say, "You're not
Right.
gonna play until you do," you put them on the bench, sends a message. You do that to a lady, she might hate your guts forever and think that you're totally unfair, so it's like
Yeah.
but if you ever single out like a what I've seen is like you can't really single anybody out. It's we gotta be more a little bit more collective. "Come on, guys, we can do this," kinda language like that.
General. Mhm.
Yeah, and, so I know I'm generalizing, of course, they're gonna be more sensitive boys and, tougher girls and all that stuff, but I just found that as long as they feel like you care about them, they'll run through a wall for you, but if they feel like you don't, the X and O's don't mean anything. With a guy, like, yes, it's nice to be liked, but at the end of the day, if they're getting playing time and you give them the kinda recipe to success and all that stuff, you don't have
Mhm.
to be best friends, and so I find that kind of interesting. There's another question I was gonna ask you along those lines, but yes, I do remember. One of the problems I'm sure you deal with a lot, you're talking about, like, the taller girls maybe feeling awkward in their bodies and all that stuff, not knowing that it's
Mhm.
okay to be tall, which is not even a choice of theirs,
Yeah.
is I feel like women may be very you're talking about getting too big and bulky. I hear that all the time, drives me crazy. I had a daughter of a client training in the gym here once, and she's a high level athlete. She's a two-time state champ in different sports, so track and field and in basketball.
Wow.
So she's legit. She was
Yeah.
doing an exercise. She's 14 at the time, and she looks at me. She watches the Kardashians and all that stuff. She says, "Will this exercise make my butt big?" And I just like, I'm like, how do I answer this question? You know what I mean? So, the most appropriate thing I could think of is, like, this is a common exercise in the world of, like, female bodybuilding. That was, like, the best thing I could think of, but at the end of the day, I'm like, "You're an athlete. Like, your body can do really cool things. Why are you so invested and it has to look like this person who gets
Yeah.
plastic surgery and has Photoshop?" I don't know. So,
Totally.
do you deal with that a lot where people care less about what their bodies can do and more about it has to look a certain type of way, and then how do you address that?
Yeah, actually, that's such a big issue I
Okay.
find in my high
Yeah.
school girls. The college girls, of course, deal with a lot of body image. I think
Mhm,
body image generally for women, I only know this because I'm a woman and I work mainly with women, but
mhm,
body image is like such a big thing. And it's something that I think a lot of women and girls are thinking about all the time. And that's sometimes not talked about as much as I think it should be.
Mhm.
or just brought to people's attention. With I coach a high school club through strength and conditioning, speed and agility, that kind of stuff. I'm at the club 4 days a week with all the different high school girls, so
Mhm.
freshmen to seniors, and the youngest girls, the freshmen, after every exercise, like they're like, "Is this gonna make me skinny? Is this
Mhm.
gonna give me abs?" The abs and the skinny is like the big one. "Is this, gonna make my legs look smaller?" Or it's
Mhm.
very much so always, "How can I look smaller?"
Mhm.
So I try to battle that with not necessarily saying like, I don't try to make them feel bad for thinking that way, but I try to shift the mindset. I'm like, well, are athletes really trying to be skinny or are
Mhm.
athletes trying to be strong? Like,
Mhm.
I think athletes are trying to aim to be stronger, right? Like,
Mhm.
we want to be strong so we can run fast. You want to jump high, right? So,
Mhm.
to be able to jump high, your legs have to be strong. You have to be
Mhm.
able to explode. And all of that comes from having muscle. Not, and at the same time, but you don't want to, there are some girls who are smaller and haven't put on as much muscle,
Mhm.
and you want to make them feel comfortable too. And this is where it's like such a tricky situation to handle. And I find myself getting caught in those situations where it's
Mhm.
like I don't want to say like you don't want to be skinny
Mhm.
because let's say there's a super lean kid who's like, so I'm my body sucks,
Sure.
like
Yeah.
every girl, no matter what their body looks like, wants their body to look different. I
Mhm.
feel like that's just super common. And regardless if they're like super lean and ripped, have the best shoulders in my opinion ever, they're like, I'm too broad. And it's
Mhm.
like, okay, like no one's ever going to win. But I think if you remind them, like the reason we're doing exercises, it's not to be on a diet or it's not to be, to get smaller. It's to be a
Mhm.
better athlete. And I
Mhm.
think those little reminders help. But even in my college girls, like I've had seniors at the end, of their season message me and like, hey, what do I do? How do I work out my legs so that they get smaller? I'm tired of having these tree trunk legs. And I'm like, no, like love your tree trunk legs. Your tree trunk legs are going to keep you from breaking your hip when you're 80. I like to bring in the breaking the hip stat. That's,
Mhm.
my young high school girls are always like, tell her the hip thing because I tell them, you're building your muscle and your foundation right now when you have
Mhm.
the most estrogen in your body. You want to take advantage of that and get as much muscle as you
Mhm.
can and as much bone density as you can. And I walk them through it. Like the way your bones get stronger is by your muscles tugging on them, and your muscles tugging on them happens when you're lifting heavy things up and using those muscles. And I'm like, but if you don't do that and your bones don't get as strong as they can before you're 25, when you're 80 and you break your
Mhm.
hip, in the next year after that, you have a 30% chance of dying.
Mhm.
Like, do you want to die because you were scared of being strong? And I think that kind of puts into perspective of them like this isn't just I'm going to be better at my sport now or I'm going to look a certain way now. Like think long term. Think of when
Mhm.
you're 80 and you want to go, walk upstairs or go downstairs to go to a beach. And like most 80-year-olds unfortunately struggle with that. And
Mhm.
if you work really hard now, get all that muscle and bone density now, you're protecting yourself to be able to
Mhm.
keep moving and keep doing things when you're older. And I think sometimes that perspective shift versus making it such a you look a certain way, you want to look this way, is a little
Mhm.
bit better. I absolutely like biggest pet peeve is when a coach like looks at a player and is like, she could lose 20 pounds. I'm like, why would you say that?
Yeah.
Like, have you seen this person play? Like, do you know how she runs? Do you know
Mhm.
how strong she is on the ball? Do you
Yeah.
know anything about her? Just like walking up and saying this firsthand, like club coaches do that all the time, unfortunately. Or sometimes parents are chronic, like,
Yeah.
I think she needs to lose like 20 pounds. And it's like,
Mhm.
why do you think that? Like, where's this like data coming from that you're getting the 20 pounds is going to make her a better athlete. It's like,
Mhm.
maybe she should gain some muscle. Like, how about
Mhm.
gaining some appropriate weight,
Mhm.
switching that a little bit. But it's tricky and it's such a hard thing to battle. But one athlete at a time, trying to make the mindset shift.
Yeah, when I, work with a lot of my female clients, it's the same thing, it's be as skinny as possible. They say,
Uh,
"Tell them don't wanna get big and bulky, this, that, the other." They report themselves eating 1,000 calories a day, which no one does. No one does that. But then also it's like, you shouldn't want to eat that little, like, you should try
No.
to fuel yourself, use food as
Mhm.
fuel, it's not the enemy. they think carbs are inherently bad, and then they get tired anytime they have to do anything endurance related, and it's like,
Mhm.
who'd have thought that
Right, I
carbs would
wonder
be a good
why.
fuel for yeah. There's definitely that part to it. I do like to I wanna touch on what you talked about with, like, performance now is longevity later. I think people talk about longevity training. This gets a little bit more into the science of coaching, but
Oh,
people just think I have to do a little light mobility stuff and banded exercises, and that'll keep me healthy forever, and it's like, no, performance is like if you think of performance as, like, lifting hard, like, heavy and, like, sprinting and jumping and doing all these things, you can regress it at any age, of course, but that to me is what longevity is. It's becoming physically competent and capable and resilient to what life throws at you, and you're not gonna get that with 3 sets of 10 of a super light band where you barely feel any sensation in your muscles or anything like that, so
right.
you do have to train hard, and then if you get ahead of it, then, yeah, you will just naturally be more resilient later on in life. Like you said, if you get ahead of it now as opposed to playing catch up later. But I also like to tell people, I think that people are either cardio junkies or, like, meatheads, and it's
Yeah.
very rare that they do both, and I tell them, like, "Do both, like, why not?" They benefit each other. If you have better cardio, you can get more density in your lifting, but if you have
Mhm.
stronger muscles, you can run more efficiently and survive the stresses of running. But also, I say that, running adds years to your life, which it does. It's the best indicator for longevity. But I say
Mhm.
strength adds life to your years. Because, like,
Yeah.
what's the point of just being brittle the entire time and, like you said, falling and breaking a hip? And then as far as, like, doesn't matter what the woman looks like, she generally wants to look different. The first thing I thought of is, straight-haired women have curling irons and curly-haired women have hair straighteners.
Yes.
And I just thought, like or blonde-haired women dye their hair brown and, like, brunettes
Vice
dye their hair
versa.
blonde. Just always
Yeah.
happens that way, so it is funny. You talked about gratitude, it makes me think of that song "Love Yours" by J. Cole.
Yes.
Like, enjoy what you got. You got some good stuff going on. You should look at
Yeah.
what you are, not what you aren't all the time. So
Mhm.
I appreciate that. I wanted to get into slightly rapid fire segments.
Cool.
So let's see. What is something that you've changed your mind on in your career, or it could be earlier on, or I guess more recently that you want to share? And any big misconceptions or things that you've personally changed your mind on?
Yeah. One thing is that I think everybody should train like an athlete. I tore my Achilles, and that happened when I stopped training like an
Mhm,
athlete, but expected my body to keep
mhm,
performing like an athlete. And now this is like the biggest thing I preach to everybody, like general pop people, older people, people who weekend warriors,
mhm,
like plyometrics are the easiest thing to throw in that will
mhm,
keep your body springy and will keep
mhm,
your body athletic.
mhm,
Humans are built to jump and run and leap and crawl and do all these amazing different things that no
mhm,
other animals can do. And when we stop doing them, we stop becoming human, stop
mhm,
being human. So, yeah, if everybody trains like an athlete, you'll never have to face something and be like, I'm not sure if my body can do that. I mean, of course,
mhm.
big things are hard, but I think a little goes a long way when it comes to plyometrics, especially.
I wanna add to that super quick. There's this, like, balance that strength coaches miss sometimes, especially early on, between variability and, like, consistency. So, like, how often do I switch up an exercise? If you're doing a deadlift, for example, and you wanna get stronger at that, you might have to stick with it 12 weeks at a time to notice, like,
Mhm.
major improvements and all that stuff. But then does it mean that you have to do, like, a very specific progression for plyometrics forever? I do a drop off a box, and then I do, like, a jump squat, and I do a jump to a
Mhm.
box, and jump over a hurdle, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I think plyometrics or just the warm up is a great opportunity to actually introduce movement variability. So, like you said, the crawling, the rolling, the jumping, all these different things. But also, I think it's a good time to kind of gamify training
Yes.
and even older people. Like,
Mhm.
if you get them balancing on one foot, throwing a tennis ball back and forth, playing catch, it's enough that it feels foreign, but not dangerous and scary. But it is
Right.
actually preparing them for things that could be dangerous and scary. So it
Mhm.
makes them more resilient. It keeps them youthful. It keeps them a little faster. It works on the brain at the same time. There's so many benefits to it, and they don't even realize it. Then they're just laughing, so they want to do the session with well, better energy and all that stuff. They might
Oh,
have a more fired up nervous system and hit a PR. Like there's so many benefits to it, and all you're doing is giving them a tennis ball and telling them to stay on one leg and throw it back and forth, or do like
really?
people kinda shit on the agility ladder. It's not gonna make you faster, but, like, if someone who's 60 and they're not gonna be doing repeat broad jumps, you give
Yeah.
them a little ladder and you give them different footwork combinations, like,
Right.
there's a win there, you know?
That
So
will change their life,
yeah, yeah, it's
honestly.
huge. Yeah.
It'll make them if you can teach a 65-year-old how to move their feet and bend their
Mhm,
ankles and not
mhm,
shuffle to
mhm,
walk, that will change their life
mhm,
significantly. And, like, yeah, it's not gonna make my college athlete, like, sprint any faster probably, you're so
right,
right, but does it help with quick feet? Sure. Does it
mhm,
help with proprioception and understanding where you are in space? Definitely. And, like, that little change that's kinda fun because it's hard and it's different, you see your coach do it and you're like, "Okay, I can do that," and you step up and you're like, "That was way harder than I thought it was gonna be,"
uh-huh.
And, like, that little challenge is fun. And like you said, like, making your warm up not, like, slow dynamic, boring, like, blah, blah,
Mhm.
blah, like, nobody wants to do that, and especially if, you only have that hour of time to train,
Right.
like, spend 5 minutes, like, jumping and playing and, like, catching yourself and doing things that's like, "We're training right now? Like, I didn't even know we were training," you just, like, kinda sneak it in under the rug a little bit.
And that's what kids do is they play and they have movement variability, whether it's, like, racing each other on bikes or climbing trees or wrestling or playing
Mhm,
hopscotch, like, there's just a bit of everything, so then they feel like
mhm,
if there's a different task, they're prepared for it. But if you just tell someone, "All we're gonna do is a squat, pull down, a shoulder press, and ride the bike for today's session," it's like, yeah,
right,
it's very structured, those things can drive adaptations, but I don't think that should be it. It should never be that
yeah,
rigid and robotic and all that.
right.
Another question I was gonna ask you is so we talked about a change, but also is there like a major misconception in your space that you'd like to myth bust?
Major misconception. Maybe this isn't a major misconception, but maybe it's just something that I like is that you have to back squat. You have to
Yes.
back squat to be good at anything, to be a great athlete, you have to back squat. I actually never program a back squat. It's
Mhm,
it's never in something I program. I Nothing wrong with the back squat. The back squat is a great movement,
mhm,
and if you enjoy a back squat, like sure, keep doing it. But for me and my athletes, like when we're squatting, it's specifically to work the quads, and I
mhm,
and I want to work the quads, so I love a heels elevated, kinda more narrow stance
mhm,
front squat or goblet
mhm,
style squat, and that's just because it targets what I want it to target a little bit more efficiently.
mhm,
Not that I don't want the hips involved or the hamstrings involved, it's just like I need this quad exercise to be a quad exercise, and hips and glutes, like, I'll hinge, I'll make an athlete hinge, and, like, that's okay, like and if you disagree with me, also totally okay, but just for me in my weight room, like, back squat is not, like, the holy grail of
mhm.
all exercises.
So I love that because that's a very nuanced but also logical take. If you look at like the squat hinge continuum, then like front squat would be the squattiest and like RDL would be the hingiest. And it's like, cool. Why not just do the extremes? And if you ever want something in the middle, like a back squat and trap bar deadlift are basically identical if you actually just look at the joint angles and all that stuff,
Right.
possibly the depth. It doesn't mean back squats are bad. I back squat, I program back squats, but I think some people think that it's a mandatory thing. There's no one exercise I think anybody has to do. And you have to ask yourself with the exercise, why am I doing this as opposed to another variation? One of
That's
my
the key.
clients can't externally rotate his shoulders enough to get into that position without any pain, but he still wants to
Mhm.
squat heavy. So we got a safety bar and he's doing Hatfield squats.
That's awesome.
And so he just gets
That's
the full
awesome.
range, he gets the balance, he
Mhm.
gets to overload the legs a lot better, and I'm just like, "All right, well, what if someone just determined that Hatfield was the best?" Then he would feel no pressure to back squat, he would maybe never do it, but originally he's
Yeah.
like, "Man, I got it, everybody else is doing it, I gotta do it." I'm like, "You don't have
Right.
to. What's
Yeah.
the goal? You want strong legs? We're gonna Hatfield." And now he's like, "Man, this is great, I got strong legs."
Yeah.
So, it's all wonderful. On the flip side, what is a, positive change that you're noticing in your industry and your space?
Yeah, positive change, I think, is honestly, I feel, and maybe I'm just becoming more aware of it, but there's so many more female coaches working with females. I
Mhm,
think that is the biggest and best thing that I'm seeing happening. More
mhm,
programs have female strength coaches, more programs have female head coaches or female assistant coaches. I think having a fully male team, or sorry,
mhm,
fully male coaching staff working with women or girls is a little nuts in 2026. That feels nuts to me. I think you need some feminine energy mixed in
mhm,
there. You need just a little bit of someone who understands where you are coming from, maybe, might
mhm,
not fully get it, but like a little bit,
mhm.
and that is like my most favorite thing that's changing right now.
Yeah, so speaking to that, I don't know if you saw, but, what is it? USSF, United States Soccer Federation, I think, said that there has to be one female coach on the staff of every professional team. I think is it in the shoot, what is the women's MLS equivalent called?
NWSL.
Yes, NWSL. I think they
Mhm.
said that and then maybe, extend it to the national team. Maybe FIFA said it for
Exactly.
international team as well. I think
I think
with
all
her being
US, like, higher
yeah,
level
yeah.
soccer, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and I think part of that makes it more of a possibility as well, is the idea that more women like yourself are getting into the space as well. So when it's a
Totally.
male-dominated space and there's only so many women to coach, it's gonna be very difficult to find these female coaches, but there are a lot more female coaches now, which I
Mhm.
think is cool. When I first started training, my algorithm was showing me, like, almost exclusively male coaches, and all it took was, like, following 2 or 3 really awesome ones to see how many amazing ones are out there.
Mhm.
And I'm actually grateful at how many female coaches I've had on the podcast that are
Yeah.
really about it. I like to distinguish between, like, an influencer and an actual coach. If you work with people frequently, you can tell a real coach in an instant if they know, like, a coaching cue or a detail that you would only get through, like, being in the I hate the whole "in the trenches" thing, we're not at war,
Yeah.
but just being in in the field, right? And so but anyway, so yeah, I think that's a really cool thing. The other question I was gonna ask is, so this is my personal favorite question. What feels like a touchdown in your job? What, like, gives you purpose or reason to your job? What brings you the most satisfaction?
Ugh, honestly, anytime one of my athletes like, comes up to me or sends me a video, like, "I just did this new thing," and, like, or got a new PR, and they're stoked about it, like,
Mhm,
their excitement is what is my touchdown,
mhm,
not the fact that they got a new PR, if that makes
mhm,
sense. It's
mhm,
like, how stoked they are that they just achieved this new big thing for themselves is, like, that blows my mind. Like, when someone walks up to a pull-up bar, has been trying all semester to do a pull-up, and finally busts one out, no bands, no assistance, full
mhm,
range of motion, no jump, nothing, and they do it, and they jump down, and they're screaming.
mhm,
The whole team is screaming, like, that is the best feeling to me, and I would
mhm,
say that is my why. Like, athletes being super stoked and proud of themselves
mhm.
is, like, my biggest touchdown for sure.
So, I love that. I think I can relate to that in the sense that it's not the PR itself that is the thing that matters, it's what it means to the person that matters,
Mhm.
and maybe the confidence, the excitement, the happiness, whatever. For me, kind of along those lines, is if someone starts to develop a relationship with exercise, a positive relationship with exercise outside of me, they
Yeah.
said on their own they did an actual workout and they tell me what they did, it's actually pretty sensible from some of the stuff that I taught them. Like,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool, or that they added a new activity, or that some other area of their life is now easier because of their
Mm.
training.
Yeah.
To me, training is a stimulus, but the true goal is the adaptation.
Yeah.
And so when you see people starting to notice the adaptation, they get excited about it. Like one of my clients was saying that she was hiking, and there was this one we started doing sandbag zercher high box step ups, very challenging, right?
Fun.
And then we're also bounding upstairs now. And now she said she went for a hike, and there's like this one slope where it's almost like you have to climb with your hands. That's
Yeah.
how steep it is. And she's like, I didn't use my hands at all, and I just like flew up this thing in record time and all that stuff.
Like a
I'm
goat.
like,
Nice.
yeah, I told her like a billy goat, exactly.
Yeah.
But I just like, "Man, this is awesome." This is for me the main reason why I train people is in theory, like, you wanna change lives, and I guess kinda going along those lines too, it's just a slightly different thing is, you definitely coach the mental quite a bit, especially with people younger
Mm.
than you. I don't find myself preaching too much to people much older than me, which many of my clients are quite a bit older than me, but I feel a little bit more comfortable telling people about my life experience when I'm older than them, and sometimes you have, like, a throwaway comment that you don't realize how much it impacts a person until later on, and
Yeah.
so I'm waiting for 10, 15 years to go by for someone to say, "Hey, you said this, and it made a huge impact on me."
Yeah.
But I think of when people had that impact on me, one of my neighbors was this person from Colombia. She was a Colombian woman who grew up in New Jersey, so she was, like, fiery on 2 fronts, right? And I told
Mhm.
her one day, I was like, "Oh, I'm known for being brutally honest." And she said, "Me like, I was known for that all the time, but then I learned I could be honest without the brutality." And it was such a smart thing that has just stuck with me forever. I instantly changed, like, who I was as a person because I couldn't, like, refute that. And she didn't realize
Yeah.
how big a deal it was until, like, 10 years later. I was like, "Hey, I don't know if you remember ever saying this, but it, like,
Yeah.
fundamentally changed me as a person." And she's like, "I don't remember saying
Totally.
that. That's wonderful. I hope that my coaching, not with that specific example, but can have
Right.
that impact on somebody." So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Totally.
My final question is, if you had any piece of advice to literally anybody about literally anything, what would that one piece of advice be?
Do something hard every day. Do something hard every day. Whatever it is, doesn't have to be physical. It can be totally mental, like do a really hard math problem. Like that's great. Like hard things keep you young for sure. So do that. Yeah.
I wanted to thank you for your time, Sahana. It was an absolute blast. I think you
Yeah.
shared a lot of wisdom, and I hope the listeners get a lot of value out of this.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. This is great. This was too much
Cool.
fun.
Cool. Well, thank
Yeah.
you very much.
Of course. Bye.